card number 2 of my summer series. So I stamped this CC Designs Beachy Beatrice onto their Copa Quality White cardstock, and then I cut it out with one of my Spellbinders circle dies. And then, as always, starting with the skin, I laid down E00, then I added E01, and then E13 is my darkest, and then I'm going back in with my E01 and blending that out a little bit, and then back in with my E00, my lightest, and then blending everything all together. Then once that's blended, going in with R20 for her cheeks, and it's still a little bit wet, so there's almost no blending needed. I just go over it a little bit more with the E00 just to blend it out a little bit more. And then for her hair, I kind of wanted to make it look curly, so I just went in with E25 and just holding the marker really, really lightly and just using the tip of the marker, I'm just lightly scribbling in little, like, random kind of curls. And then going in with my E27 and doing the exact same thing. So no blending, really, really light touch, because it's just the nature of Copics to kind of like blend into each other, you know, and like saturate the cardstock. So to get a lot of detail, it's kind of harder, especially with such a tiny little area. But it just works. And then for her suit and little hat, I started with pink, and that's when I realized I missed that little part of her neck, so I quickly colored that in. And then back to her suit, I'm using RV04, and then RV06 and RV09. And just a note with these ones, these are really saturated colors. They actually dry darker or slightly different than they are when they're wet. They look like neon when they're wet. You can see it here as I'm going back over it and then blending everything out again. Like, they literally look neon, and then they dry to like a much nicer pink. So don't be surprised when you see that when you're playing around with them, and that those ones are just kind of different little markers. So anyway, now onto the sand. It's the easiest way to do sand is just to dab the markers right onto the cardstock. Again, no blending. I started with E31, then I went with 33, then 35, and then 37, just dabbing. The longer you hold it and the harder you dab the marker, the bigger the dots are. So you just kind of play with it. It's kind of fun. And then the little starfish, I just did Y31 and then dabbed on a little bit of YR23. And then for the other shell, I just did E40, and then I added a bit of BG000 right around the lines, just to kind of give it that, I was kind of thinking of, like, you know, those pearlized shell look, so did that. And then for the background, I kept it really simple. I just used BG10 and just kind of pulled the color out and away from the image, and then I went in with BG000, that just blended it a little bit more, and then pulled the color out a little bit further. And then finally I went in with my my colorless blender, and then pulled it the other way just to make it fade to white. So really simple. When you're using light colors like that, it's really easy. So then for the card itself, I'm using the Fancy Pants Beach Babe pattern papers. And I kind of wanted to keep this one blue piece kind of like, didn't want to cover it up with anything else, since that's kind of the pattern of it and everything. So I just chose a couple, like one other pattern paper and then a piece of green cardstock. And then for the ribbon, I'm just using some AmyRs sheer polka dot ribbon, because the color matched her little suit perfectly. So I wrapped it around the card front and then taped it on the back, and then grabbed a second piece to tie into a bow. This is good ribbon to kind of practice bow making with, because I find it's just really easy to tie. You almost can never go wrong with it. So just a little bit of fiddling. You notice I always pinch the center of the bow when I'm pulling on the bow itself or on the tails. That keeps it from completely undoing. So once I've got it the way I want it, trim off the tails. And then the main image, I kind of fiddled. I was thinking of putting it up on dimensionals, but then I changed my mind, so I just used my ATG adhesive to adhere that so that it's flat against the card. So then once I've got that the way I want it, for the sentiment, I am using a sentiment from my new Oh So Beachy sentiment set. So again, inked it up with Memento Tuxedo Black and then stamped it onto some pink cardstock. And then I punched that one out with a circle punch. I just used a bunch of random circle punches from the for this card from my stash, but most of them are all by, in fact all of them are by EK Success. So I punched out the sentiment, and then I just punched out some random circle shapes from some more of the pattern papers from the same pack. And then these little braddies, they're by Doodlebug. I actually have had them for years. You can't, unless you run across them randomly, like they're not available anymore. But I had them in my stash, and they're perfect for beach cards, and they're so cute. So I couldn't help myself, and I had to use them for this card. So sorry, but yeah, I've looked online and I couldn't find them anywhere, but you never know, maybe you'll find them if you really want them. But yeah, I attached the little starfish one by the sentiment, and then I wanted to use another one on the lower part of the card, so one of the little fish ones. So I just attached some more random little circles of pattern paper and cardstock, and then attached the little fish bratty. So once I've got that the way I want it, it's back to adhering that to the card front. So just got everything flattened down, ATG adhesive as always, and then I matted that with a piece of pink cardstock, same as the sentiment, to kind of tile the pink in together. And then once I've got that, attach that to the card itself, which is the same green cardstock that I used on the front, kind of keeping everything consistent. And then of course I couldn't leave it as is, and I had to add a little bit of glitter, so I grabbed my Glam Pink stickles and just added it to the little circles of her suit and hat, and then dabbed a little bit on the sentiment and the other pink circle. And then for the inside of the card, I just used pieces of the pattern paper that were left over from doing the front of the card, and then I grabbed this other sentiment from the Oh So Beachy set and then inked it up with Memento. I was going to stamp it just on the bottom corner and just trim it out square. So I inked it up, was still planning on doing that, and then as I went to stamp it, I'm like, no, I kind of wanted to keep with the circle theme. So I stamped up a little higher where I had more room and just used one of my Spellbinder circle dies to trim it out. So got the one that's the right size, and then used a piece of tape to hold it in place so that it doesn't shift when I run it through my Big Shot. Just like so. So then it's trimmed out. And then just a matter of adhering all the papers for the inside of the card. And I die cut a larger white circle for a place to write something. And then attached the sentiment, and then punched out another little circle just to keep the theme consistent. So then once I've got that adhered, all that's going to go on the inside of the card. As always, I'll put a link below to my blog post with links to all the supplies used. And thank you guys again for watching my videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!